Josh Giddey has an interview with Joe Cowley, which is one of the more insightful interviews that I've read in a while, in which he talks about wanting that playoff redemption and also has a very level head over the stats he's been putting up for the Chicago Bulls. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, the Chicago Bulls are shutting down a lot of their roster for this game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to talk about why that is and what that means for the Bulls going forward. We're going to get to all that plus more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off talking about this Josh Giddey interview with Joe Cowley, which was a very, very insightful interview. You guys know I'm not the biggest Joe Cowley fan as far as of his writing, but this was a very, very good, article here that was written here in which he talked about after the Thunder's playoff exit last year, right? And he said that he had a 15-hour plane ride back to Australia, and the Wi-Fi happened to be down on that plane, so he had no connection with his phone, and so it left him in a place of being able to sit there for 15 hours and just being contemplative over what happened, right? And, he did talk about the fact that he's kind of gotten over, he's gotten to the point of, being at peace with how that season ended with the Thunder and how his career, therefore, ended with the Thunder as well. But he did talk about wanting that redemption, right? Running redemption the next time he gets a chance and opportunity in the playoffs to show what he can bring to be a better player, right? And that's what he said this, direct quote, "From that point on, my mind has been the next time I get to the postseason, what happened in that playoff series is never going to happen again," right? He said this, that playoff series was probably the experience I needed. I'd much rather go through that at 21 years old than at 30 and be in the playoffs for the first time. It was one of the toughest lessons I've ever learned, but it was also the right thing at the right time. Maybe not the right thing, but it is what I needed, right? And he talked about one of the Morris twins coming up to him afterwards and telling him, you're too good to let that happen to you, and, being supportive there. And you feel some of that with Josh Giddey here, right? Like, and make no mistake, Josh Giddey's career here with the Bulls started off slow. He had a very slow start to the season. He was unplayable in fourth quarters at times. And I think that that's adds to the redemption arc, right? Is that he's went from that in the place that he was in then to being a much better player, over the course of the season, to the point where not only is he closing games, but he's being a pivotal part of closing games. Now, we did have a game, I think it was early last week where he did sit for a second in the fourth quarter. He did get benched for a second in the fourth quarter, but then he came back in there and made a key assist. He almost helped the Bulls win that game if it wasn't for Nikola Vucevic and his inability, to hit some shots. But that's what it came down to. And so, Josh Giddey is learning, and I think sometimes it's easy to remember or to forget that Josh Giddey's still only a 22-year-old player. And the experience that he had in the playoffs with the Thunder is great to have that at a young age, but it also fills you with that fire, right? Like, it fills you with that fire to want to be better the next time you get there. And this whole entire season, especially on the back half of the season, has been a much better and kind of just more even kill season for Josh Giddey, right? He has a level of calmness about it. Even when he's asked about his contract situation, he always goes back to, oh, well, it'll work itself out. That'll work itself out in the offseason. We weren't able to get a deal done. It kind of is what it is. He doesn't sit there and he's not like, yeah, I would like, he's just very level-headed about it, right? And so, that's a big thing, I think, for a player that's coming in with what Josh Giddey's done. And even he has, Joe Cowley even asked him about, him being the only Chicago Bull player. He's on pace to finish with at least 14.7 rebounds, 7 assists. And he talked about the fact, that's only Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan who've done that, right? And, he talked about, like, the numbers don't really matter to him in a case like that. Like, and this is why I say things like, we go back and forth, especially over on Locked On Bulls. Me and Pat had an episode in which we talked about the Bulls needing a true number one. And again, the Josh Giddey stands, and I always separate fans and stands. We're like, what do you mean? You got a number one in Josh Giddey? And it's like, you got to understand, like, Josh Giddey's ideal role isn't him being some go-to isolation scorer when the game's on the line. That's just not That's not who Josh Giddey is. And if you ask Josh Giddey who he wants to be, right, he's a player that's better at setting play. Like, make no mistake about it, Josh Giddey's shown this year he can be a scorer for the Bulls when need be, and that's great. I want to be clear here. What he's able to do and how he's grown as a scorer, understanding on how to get to the free throw line, even the percentages that he's shooting at is great. But Josh Giddey, I tell you, that's not the role that's even ideal for him, right? So as the Bulls continue to fill this thing out, we'll see where it goes. And I'm not saying that he can't be a number one. We'll see, right? And I have the same doubts for Kobe. Kobe isn't a number one yet. He is the Bulls' number one scoring option because he's the best scorer we have on the team and the best option for that. But to be a true number one player in this league on a team, you have to do it for an entire season. You have to be able to do it in the playoffs, right? And that's just not what they've had the opportunity to show yet, right? So, what and how Josh Giddey is growing is great. I'm, for one, happy that it came in a Bulls uniform, and I'm also happy. The thing, and I don't know how many people will admit this, right? It is what it is. I am happy that Josh Giddey had the opportunity, the skill, and he's done it in proving people wrong, right? Now, some Bulls fans are going to be slower to admit that he proved them wrong because that's just the nature of Bulls fans as far as when they already make a decision out on a player, right? But, to act like Josh Giddey is not stepped up and is not been a player that from the start of the season to now hasn't drastically improved in not only his role, his execution, all of that. Like, he has. And that is a very good thing. Josh Giddey is averaging 14 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists on the year so far, right? And when you look at that, the pre and post All-Star break and the way that he stepped up, you can deny it if you want to, but over the post All-Star break, 20 points per game, 10.8 rebounds per game, 6.7 assists. He's doing that with a steal and a half per game as well, getting to the free throw line 4 times per game, basically, the most of his NBA career. This is a player in Josh Giddey that is stepping up hugely, man. And for people that still want to deny that, I'm sorry, 6 free throws per game. Undercut his post All-Star break free throws, right? 49% shooting from the field, 45% shooting from 3. These are things that when a player does that in your uniform and you want to still deny it, that's on you. That's a personal thing on you that you have with that player, that you have in the way that you evaluate basketball. That's personal. And, there are a lot of people that take out other things out on Josh Giddey, and that's perfectly fine. You do what you want to do there, right? But for me and for this channel, right, when players perform well in the Chicago Bulls uniform, guess what we're going to do? We're going to talk about that they're performing well in the Chicago Bulls uniform for our team. And then when you learn, I get that the personal things happen. And Josh Giddey talked about this in the Joe Cowley interview as well, talking about how tough last year was for him because of the things outside of basketball, the way that the season ended, right? That pressure alone could have crushed some people, right? Some of y'all in real life can't even deal with a breakup, much less the pressure that comes with everybody blaming things out on you, right? And that's something that I think we as basketball fans can forget sometimes is that there's humans behind all of this, right? These are humans that are doing what they love and what they're passionate about. Not every single person is as passionate about basketball, but you cannot listen to an interview of the way that Josh Giddey talks about the game of basketball and not feel like and walk away and think that this young man doesn't absolutely love this game here of basketball. He does, right? And he does take it seriously. And we for so long, right, as Bulls fans, and this is kind of the weird thing as far as being on this side of the Bulls community and just seeing how everybody talks about players differently, that Bulls fans so often talk about, well, why didn't they go off and work in their game in the offseason? Why didn't they do this in the offseason? It's all that simple. This is a kid that not only performed in the Olympics, got hurt, couldn't do a lot of practicing in the offseason, had to come into training camp and kind of get up to gear, and he's still improved in the season as well as with his chemistry with Kobe White and his chemistry overall on the court as well, right? And that's the thing that I look at this and I say, man, what are we doing here? But it is the woulda, coulda, shoulda. It is what it is when it comes down to that, right? But I for one, I'm going to be the one that I am definitely going to acknowledge the fact that Josh Giddey absolutely 120% has improved this year and has proved a lot of my doubts wrong. Now, again, like I said, and I hold this true with everybody because of where the Bulls, their season took off at, I need to see it at the start of next season. I need to see it for the majority of next season. Every player is going to go through their ups and downs over the year, so I'm not expecting anybody to be perfect. But I want to see that, right? But you look at what this team has and how we've changed our identity. People talk positively about how the Bulls have changed their play style, have changed an identity and crafted an identity, have gotten more modern in the way that they play basketball. And I'm not saying it's just because of Josh Giddey. It's not. But if you don't realize how big of a part that Josh Giddey's play, rebounding, setting up, and even is scoring as well, like, if you don't recognize that, that's just on you. Like, we've talked a lot in the last few years about Billy Donovan's system, how good it looks at a lot of times comes down to how the production from the point guard position, right? That just is what it is. And I mean, that's all the way back to his OKC days. It was a little bit different in college, but his NBA success, how successful Billy Donovan's offenses look in the NBA has always come down to the production at the point guard position. Yes, you need other players to be productive as well, but there's almost a direct correlation with that. Josh Giddey has come in and performed, operated in the system extremely well. It wasn't just him. Trey Jones did it. Kobe's done it, right? Lonzo's done it at times when he's been healthy. But but to say that the point guard who's playing the most minutes and that's starting for you hasn't done that as well, it just is what it is. And I hope that Josh Giddey gets that redemption here in a Bulls jersey, whether it's this year, whether it's in the future, whatever it is. I hope that he gets an opportunity to redeem himself in the playoffs from what it looked, because a lot of people blame him for the Thunder and where their season ended last year. And like I've done a good job at pointing out, it wasn't just him. Go and look at the way that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams, how bad they shot in that series on the wide open threes. And you know who's creating those wide open threes? Maybe it was the player that is in the 95th percentile as far as generating wide open shots for their teammates. Maybe it was that by chance, right? So it's those type of things that we're looking at. And so, reading this article from Josh Giddey was great to see, great to hear. And I hope that Josh Giddey does get that chance to redeem himself, whether it's this year in the postseason, whether it's in the future in the postseason, whatever it is. Because, hey, Josh Giddey's a player now that I'm looking at. I'm very excited to see what his future is going to turn into here with the Chicago Bulls. But let's move on from that. The Bulls do have a game today against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it was already announced yesterday afternoon, around 4 p.m., actually, pretty early, that Josh Giddey is one of the players listed as questionable. Him and Nikola Vucevic are listed as questionable. Kobe White's listed as out. Kevin Huerter's listed as out. So as of right now, the only starter that we know right now that will be playing for the Chicago Bulls for sure is Matas Buzelis, right? So we could be playing a very bare bones version of our team against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I do think there's a reason for that, right? So when you look at the Eastern Conference standings, the Bulls and the Miami Heat, who we do play tomorrow, are a really big, important game for the standings, right? When you look at it, the Bulls right now hold only a half game advantage over the Miami Heat. And if the Bulls do win that game, they basically gain a full game over the Miami Heat. The Atlanta Hawks and the Orlando Magic play 2 more games here over the last part of the season, right? And so because of that, if the Atlanta Hawks do happen to lose both those games, which they play today, and then they play on the last day of the season on Sunday, April 13th, if they lose both those games against the Orlando Magic, then the Bulls can leapfrog and go into that 8th seed, right? Which then you're getting a home playoff opportunity. Now, of course, the pessimistic side of that is that Jerry Reinsdorf wants a home game of postseason play so we can get that good postseason extra game revenue, right? You can charge a little bit extra for those tickets. But then, like I said, there's also a standing part of that. And when you look at it, the Chicago Bulls on the second of back-to-backs this season are 4-8, right? So they have a losing record on the second of back-to-backs. So they're trying to get their guys some rest to play against that Miami Heat team that is probably as well going to be trying to win that game to get into that spot. We'll end up seeing what happens there, right? So this is a play by the Chicago Bulls to, focus more so on the game against the Miami Heat, a game that they probably already, I know that Donovan Mitchell's been ruled out too, but a game that already they probably weren't going to win or have a great chance of winning against the Cleveland Cavaliers anyway, right? So you're sitting your guys, you're getting them some key rest, and you're preparing for a big matchup against the Miami Heat. And that's what this is shaping up to be, right? We already know that Lonzo Ball's out, Trey Jones is out, those type of things. So, the fact that they're listed just flat out as rest for Kobe White, Huerter, they're listed as a cervical sprain, I think is what they listed it at there. And Giddey and Vooch are questionable. I wouldn't be surprised if sometime later on today we'll get, the confirmation on if they're going to sit or not. But the Bulls are they're playing the odds right now, right? And so they're preparing more so and focusing in on that Miami Heat game, which could make this Cavaliers game a little bit even more interesting when it comes down to it. And here's what I'll say on that, right? Is that this Cleveland Cavaliers game, this game could be one of those games where, you know how like at the end of the seasons, for the last couple of years, where we've had those games, or I think a couple of years ago, where Patrick Williams went off for like 30 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. A game, I think last season, I think was one of the games where like Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips, I think one of those games last year where they both had some really big games too. Like that's what this is shaping up to be, right? And it could still be fun in that. Like seeing Patrick Williams get an opportunity again. He is probably going to start with Kevin Huerter sitting down. We may have a backcourt of THT and Javon Carter, the UNC lineup, as we're calling it. And, you know, there's something about games like this and coming into it that because the expectations are removed, even the tension is moved, right? You can just play. You can just watch the game and enjoy it. And that's just really what I'm coming into to this game doing, just watching this game and enjoying it. But it does put a highlight on, listen, this Bulls team is really not worried about lottery odds. I know some people have asked, well, hey, is this so they can try to maintain some lottery odds in case they don't make it out of the play-in tournament? I think that we're too far gone for that. Not to say that we can't, but I mean, because things are so tight, right? If the Bulls were to like lose out the rest of the way, I think they can still get up to the ninth worst record in the NBA, right? But with that said, is that I don't think what this is about. I think that this is a pretty straightforward thing. The Bulls are gearing up. That game against the Miami Heat is a very important game on the Bulls schedule now. And that's an important game for standings. It's an important game for maybe hosting a play-in series. Now, if the Atlanta Hawks end up winning both games against the Orlando Magic, it's all for naught. But the Bulls are putting themselves in a really good position to do so. And keep in mind, after the Miami Heat game, we got Washington, we got Philly. Those are two teams that are already packing it in. The Bulls can't really go into those light either. But this is the last week of the NBA season, right? And this last week of the season, just finish it strong, get through it with everybody healthy, come out on the other side of that, and let's see where this team's going to be at, man. That's really what this all comes down to. This team in the Chicago Bulls, this year has been a redemptive year in a lot of ways. And I know that's kind of difficult to say, a redemptive year in a season where so far you only have 36 wins. But when you look at it like this, right? First of all, this team was projected to win 28 and a half games this year by most media outlets, right? That was kind of around the mark that the Bulls were. They were also a team where the direction was hugely questioned. I don't really think too many people are questioning the direction. I think people don't agree with the direction because you have some people that think you should be tanking out, you should be bottoming out, let's get top 4 picks for the next however many years until we get a star. So they disagree with the direction chosen, but this team has chosen a direction, and they're betting on their players. And I said it in a video about a month or so ago. The Bulls have chosen development and competitiveness over tanking. And that's just simply what they've done. This is a team and an organization that has made the choice and decision. They made the business decision of, we're not going to tank. This is not what we're doing here. That's not what we're going to be about. That's not how we're going to go about this. We're not tanking. We're going to be in here trying to compete for every single game, for every single win. And that's how we're going to develop. We're going to develop our guys through our development department that Peter Patton's running and actually being competitive in these games. Now, they still got big questions about their future. Josh Giddey got to be locked up. Kobe got to be locked up. What are you doing with Ayo Dosunmu, who got to be locked up, right? Then, over the next couple of years, Dalen and Julian, what are you doing with those guys, right? The draft picks over them. You now have your draft. You own your draft future into perpetuity. You own all your first-round draft picks. Hit on them, right? You got to hit on more than not. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone has to turn into a star. That means that you have to get an actual serviceable NBA player out of most of these guys, and that's the path that the Bulls are on right now. Now, some people have their right to disagree with that path, but that's the path that was chosen by this team. That was the path chosen by this organization. This is not an org that is going to be tanking and bottoming out. They're not doing it. You had some people saying, "Oh, we need to absolutely trade Kobe White right now while the value is high so we can get picks back." And I don't think that's going to happen, right? Well, I'm not going to say that it's an impossible chance that it's completely impossible that it happens, but I do think that there is, the way things are looking right now, unless you do draft a guard, somebody crazy right in this draft, like Kobe's future is here. Josh Giddey's future is here. And the future is a lot younger. Madas Busilis is part of the future of this team, right? He has a lot that he needs to work on and grow on as a player. But where he's at right now as a base of a rookie, that's a really good place to be in for him, right? And we got to just continue to see that growth and development from this team. And so I'll tell you what, this has been a season that has been fun, more fun than I thought it would be, especially on the back half of the season. And now we just got to see how well we can execute getting to that next phase. And that's really what the question is. How do we get to that next phase consistently? And we'll see what the future holds for the Bulls. But as of right now, we're gearing in for a playoff, at least one play-in game, and see if the Bulls can get to the playoffs. And we'll see what that looks like for the Bulls. And keep in mind, the NBA draft is like 4 weeks away, 5 weeks away. And so we'll know the Bulls playoff and lottery place within the next few weeks. So, we'll see what happens here, man. Clarity is coming for those that really want that. And we'll see what the future does hold. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.